Hi guys, I'm going to be presenting the sample Say What Wednesday presentation. So you guys should have just watched the video about um, all of the requirements for this, but I'm going to do the actual 5 slide presentation so you can see what's going to be expected of you. So this article is titled "The EPA Relaxes Rules Limiting Toxic Waste from Coal Plants." And this came from the New York Times from August 31st, so just 2 days ago, and it was written by Lisa Friedman. And you can see that on this slide, I have the location or the website from where I got it. So you need to make sure that you include that in your presentation. So slide 1 needs to be get the gist. And last week, the Trump administration relaxed some of the wastewater treatment standards for coal burning power plants. In past, the coal plants um, had to have special scrubbers on their smokestacks and also had regulations for how much waste could be released into the waterways surrounding their facility. Um, the reason why President Trump did this was he was hoping that he could help the declining coal industry. He also wanted to be able to extend the deadline for some of these coal burning power plants to meet any new regulation requirements. So, this could um, help some companies save a lot of money. At the same time, it is really putting our environment into jeopardy. So, what are these impacts? On the old regulations, which the Obama era revisited these rules and these regulations that hadn't been looked at since like the 80s. And so they have these regulations in place for coal burning power plants to protect the rivers and waterways from the polluted wastewater leaving those coal burning power plants. Um, that wastewater has been found to contain really, really dangerous components like arsenic, lead, selenium, which, if that is ingested, it causes a lot of damage to the people and the animals that are taking in that water. This also poses a lot of risk to anybody who lives within 3 miles of the power plants. So, under the old regulations, it would reduce the pollutants entering the water by 1.4 billion pounds. Now, on the flip side, it cost a little bit more money. It would cost about $480 million a year for the coal industry to follow the regulations. But they also saw that with these regulations that the health care costs, so like when you go to the doctor and things like that, those costs were decreased because there wasn't this pollutants going into the atmosphere, but also there weren't pollutants going into the water. Okay, with these reduced regulations that just went into effect, this actually will save the electric companies about $140 million annually. And it only reduces the amount of pollutants entering the water by 1 million pounds a year. So if you look at that, the old regulations focused more on the environment, less on how much it's going to cost the companies, where the new regulations are trying to save the companies a lot more money, but not really looking at the environmental impacts. They also allowed any coal burning power plant that was set to retire or close by the year 2028, so still 8 years from now, they do not need to follow any of these new regulations. So they were kind of waived from anything. Okay, what are my personal impacts and opinions on this? So here's a little map of where these coal burning power plants can be found. Um, Now, I personally don't live right next to a coal burning power plant. However, I might have family. Um, you'll learn that things that get in the water can spread to other places. So just because I'm not directly next to it doesn't mean that I'm not going to be downstream. Okay, but people living near power plants often see more health related issues like asthma and respiratory illnesses by reducing um, the pollutants or reducing those regulations and allowing more pollution to get into our environment, we're going to see a lot more people having these health issues. Maybe one of the positive things is that a coal burning power plant wouldn't have to charge people as much. So maybe we would see a reduction in our electric bill, but I'm not sure about that. I think that my opinion too is that lifting these regulations will take back all of the hard work that people before our administration now have done that we're trying to make the earth more sustainable. Okay. And that to me is kind of a struggle because we need to make personal choices for today that are going to help our earth be here for future generations. And I really worry that choices might be made by personal impact by our leaders. And so it's not a secret that our president right now has his hand in some of the coal industry. And so I just fear that um, some of the choices that the administration is making might have a personal impact rather than looking at a global impact. So, what are my solutions? I think that we need to continue moving forward with policy, making sure that we keep sustainability in mind. Um, we have already, as a world, started looking at possible other resources. There is probably about 40 years of coal left um, in the world. Okay, so in 40 years, I may not be here, but you'll be here in 40 years. Um, there may not be any coal left for you to use. So, starting now to look at and utilize those alternative energy sources is going to be important. And I think it's also important to really learn what our policymakers are doing so that when you go to vote and you make your voice heard, you're informed. So that, guys, is as long as your presentation needs to be, it is 5 slides, and you will stop your recording, and then you will submit this on Schoology.